It was a Friday night in late October, a little after 11:30 p.m. My parents were out of town for the weekend, and I had the whole place to myself. I wasn't scared of being alone. I'd done it before. But that night felt different. The house was quieter than usual. No hum from the dishwasher, no TV running in the background, just the occasional tick from the hallway clock. I was lying in bed, lights off, scrolling on my phone. Every so often, I'd hear the wind push against the side of the house. Normal stuff. But then, faintly, I thought I heard something else. A sound that didn't belong. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps. They weren't coming from outside. I could tell by the way they sounded. Soft but heavy, pressing down on the carpet in the hallway right outside my bedroom. At first, I thought maybe I was hearing things. I set my phone down, held my breath, and listened. The sound stopped. For a few seconds, the silence was so thick I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Then, 2 more steps. I froze. I knew I'd locked the front door earlier, the back door too. Every window was closed. My brain started coming up with explanations I didn't believe. Maybe the house was settling, maybe it was my imagination. Slowly, I turned my head toward the crack in my bedroom door. And that's when I saw him. Halfway down the hallway, a man was standing completely still, facing my room. His face was in shadow, the hood of a dark sweatshirt pulled low over his forehead. I couldn't make out his eyes, but I could feel them on me. We just stared at each other. Neither of us moved. I didn't even breathe. Every instinct in my body told me not to make a sound. I backed away slowly, grabbed my phone from the bed, and dialed 911 as quietly as I could. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I whispered to the operator, telling her there was a man in my hallway. She told me to stay calm, stay hidden, and not to hang up. When I looked back through the crack in the door, he was gone. My stomach dropped. I could hear my own breathing now, shallow, shaky. A second later, there was a loud slam from the back of the house, like a door being forced shut. The operator told me to stay on the line. The police were already on their way. I stayed locked in my room until I saw red and blue lights flashing outside my window. When the cops arrived, I finally opened my door. They searched the house, starting with the hallway. That's when they noticed muddy footprints on the carpet. They led from the laundry room to the hallway outside my bedroom, then back to the laundry room and out the rear door. The lock on that door had been broken. One of the officers asked if I knew anyone who might want to scare me. I shook my head. I didn't know that man. I'd never seen him before in my life. Before they left, one of the cops pulled me aside and said quietly, "He was in here for a while before you saw him. Those footprints in the kitchen, they're older. The mud was dry." It meant that man had been in my house for at least 15 minutes, maybe longer. He'd been walking around while I was lying in bed, completely unaware. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I kept replaying it in my head, how still he stood, the way his hood hid his face, and how he didn't run when he saw me. He didn't panic. He just left. Like it wasn't the right time. Now, even when my parents are home, I make sure every door is locked and every window is latched. And sometimes, late at night, I'll wake up thinking I heard those same slow footsteps in the hallway again. I was 16 when this happened. It was a Saturday night, and my parents had gone out to dinner with some family friends. I wasn't invited. Adult conversation, they said, so I had the house to myself for a few hours. It was about 10 p.m. I was lying on the couch in the living room, a blanket over me, watching a show on Netflix. The lights were dim, the kind of cozy atmosphere that makes you feel safe. Then I heard it. At first, I thought it was part of the show, a faint, slow breathing. It was so subtle that I almost ignored it. But then I muted the TV. The sound didn't stop. It was rhythmic, steady inhales, slow exhales, almost like someone was trying to keep quiet but couldn't help it. I sat up, scanning the room. The breathing seemed to be coming from somewhere behind me toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms. My skin prickled. I told myself it had to be the house making noises, but the more I listened, the more I became certain that it was a human sound. I grabbed the TV remote and turned the volume back up, pretending to be unfazed. In reality, I was barely breathing myself, straining to hear over the noise. After a few minutes, the sound faded. I started to relax until I heard it again. This time, it was closer. I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it toward the hall. The breathing stopped instantly. That made my stomach turn. If it had been the house, a pipe, or the wind, the noise wouldn't have just stopped because I pointed a light at it. I stood up and walked toward my bedroom. The door was open, but it felt wrong somehow. Too dark, too still. When I stepped inside, I noticed the closet door was slightly open. I never leave it like that. My hands were trembling as I reached out and pulled it open in one quick motion. Nothing. Just clothes and shoes. I told myself I was being paranoid. I even laughed a little to shake off the tension, then went back to the couch. I tried to focus on my show, but my ears were tuned to every sound in the house. About 15 minutes later, I heard the front door unlock. My parents were home early. My dad stepped inside, kicked off his shoes, and went to hang his coat in the small front closet near the door. He opened it and froze. Before I could even ask what was wrong, he slammed it shut and yelled, "Call 911." I grabbed my phone, and as I was dialing, the door burst open. A man lunged out, pushing past my dad, and ran straight out the front door. He was holding a kitchen knife. We never got a good look at his face, just that he was wearing a dark hoodie and had a scruffy beard. The police searched the area, but couldn't find him. When they questioned me later, I realized what had happened. The breathing I'd been hearing wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from the front closet just a few feet behind where I'd been sitting on the couch.
He'd been hiding there the entire time, probably waiting for me to go to bed. To this day, I still check that closet every single night before I lock the front door. And sometimes, when the house is quiet, I swear I hear slow, steady breathing again, like he's back, waiting.
It was a Thursday night in early winter. Around 1 a.m., I was in the living room, sitting at the dining table with my laptop, finishing some late homework. My parents had gone to bed hours earlier. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. From where I sat, I had a clear view of the basement door across the room. We hardly ever used the basement. It was unfinished, cold, and mostly just a place for storage. That's why it immediately caught my attention when I noticed the door was open about a foot. I stopped typing and just stared at it. I was sure I hadn't opened it. Neither had my parents. They never went down there unless they had to. I got up slowly, walked over, and closed it, sliding the small metal latch at the top into place. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe it hadn't been closed all the way earlier and just swung open. I went back to my seat and tried to focus. 5 minutes later, I looked up and my stomach dropped. The basement door was open again, this time wider. I hadn't heard it move. I hadn't heard anything at all, but the latch was unhooked, dangling freely. I just stood there, frozen, staring into the pitch-black gap. I swear I felt a draft of cold air drifting up from the stairs. My first instinct was to grab my phone and call my neighbor, Tom. He lived next door and worked nights, so I knew he'd be awake. My voice was shaky when I told him what happened. Without hesitation, he said he was coming over. While I waited, I kept my eyes locked on the basement door. My mind was running through possibilities. Maybe a window down there was open. Maybe the latch was broken. Anything but what I really feared. When Tom arrived, he stepped inside holding a heavy flashlight. "You sure you saw it open twice?" he asked. I nodded. We both walked toward the door. He pulled it open the rest of the way, and the cold hit us immediately. The basement smelled damp, like wet concrete. We went down slowly, his flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Nothing seemed out of place. Boxes stacked against the walls, an old workbench in the corner, a couple of dusty chairs. Then Tom's light swung toward the small window near the ceiling. It was wide open. The latch was snapped clean off. Underneath the window, we could see muddy footprints on the concrete floor. They led from the window to the base of the stairs. Whoever had been in here had climbed in from outside and then come halfway up the stairs toward the door. Tom's voice was low. "They were probably waiting for you to go to bed." That thought made my stomach turn. If I hadn't noticed the door the first time, they might have come up quietly while I was sitting there, completely unaware. We called the police, and they searched the basement and surrounding area. The officer told us there had been reports in the neighborhood of someone breaking into houses through basements. He'd hide until the homeowners were asleep, then rob the place, or worse. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the house made my pulse spike. I kept imagining the sound of that latch sliding open in the dark. We had the basement window replaced the next day and installed new locks on every door. But even now, years later, I still find myself glancing at that basement door whenever I'm in the living room at night, because I'll never forget how quietly it opened twice.